everybody, welcome back to the Claremont Classic Garage. Today we're going to make a video about our Jinma wood chipper. I'll give you a fast review on this thing just to bring you up to speed for those who never saw the old videos where I first introduced this and did some work to it. It's a Jinma 8-inch. Once to this over the years, everybody that has one of these things ends up doing some modifications to it. First, you'll see it's got a set of wheels on it. This is mostly because I use it on these old Fergusons and 8Ns. They don't have live hydraulics. So in order for me to be able to lift it up with the hitch to transport it, I have to have it running because the hydraulic pump runs off the PTO shaft on these things. So that leaves you with two choices. You can unhook the PTO and just pull the front half of the shaft off when you're going to transport it around. Then you can have the PTO running and lift it up. Or I just decided to put a set of wheels on it. Those are just, you can see those there are stubs from an old Chrysler K car. That's the easiest thing I found to use. I just drilled 4 holes, bolted them on, and used a mini spare on backwards. I wouldn't recommend running on the road with wheels on backwards, but for this thing, it's just fine. Other modifications that we were forced to do to this thing. The infeed drive. This is how they come. It's just a terrible thing. The universal joints just have steel pins, and over the years they wear out. So what I did under here, I made a new PTO shaft out of a little more robust greasable U-joints. The problem is because those parts are so much larger than these parts, the new shaft was too long. So I had to extend everything over this way about 2 inches, the little gearbox that drives it. I had to get a longer belt. But anyway, in the end, it all worked out. I just spaced the trip lever over a little bit, and it still works. You can see here, that's engaged. It won't go all the way engaged because it's not running. But you can see here that it kicks off. If I hit the bar here, it works as it should. So that's good. Anyway, what we're going to do with this thing today, we're going to service it up. I'm going to look at the cutting blades and the anvil and see if they need to be sharpened or replaced. And I want to do a couple of other little things to it. I noticed when it was running that smaller brush was not getting pulled in. And you can see there, if you look, the feed roller, it's sitting up a little too high on this end. So when small stuff is in there, it doesn't get pulled in. There's one of the knives right there. Also, I wouldn't mind putting a bit of paint on stuff like this because when I did it, it was in the heat of the moment. I needed to get the machine back up running again, so stuff ended up a little bit ugly. Also, you can see here, I've extended these arms all the way out, and I've actually had to make an extension on this arm because these old Ferguson tractors use the small 1 1/16 PTO shaft, or is it 1 1/8? And the modern standard is a 1 3/8 shaft. So you have to add an adapter onto that shaft. Or you can replace the whole shaft with a newer shaft with the larger spline. But there was nothing wrong with that. So it's got the adapter on it, which again made the drive line too long. So rather than cut my drive shaft, I just I made that little extension and that. So if you wanted to run it on something else, you could close that back up. It works for me. The only thing with it having it so far away like this is that it increases the effect of the weight on the 3-point hitch. And right now it's just barely all it can do to lift it, and the front wheels are hardly touching the ground. But it will lift it if I have to. Removing this cover from this area here exposes the main drive shaft, the secondary drive shaft, all our pillow blocks for greasing. We can check our belts. And then there's a plate here 2 bolts, and that exposes the hardware for the knives, so we can get at the knives. The first step to getting the blades out is to reach in there with an extension and a 15mm socket and take off there's 4 nuts, being careful not to lose them. Now, we're not out of the woods yet because they're countersunk Allen bolts that are screwed in from the other side. So we have to go to the other side and get those out, and then our blade will come out. And they're all the way down in there. You can see the 4 screws on the blade. So first thing we have to do is go down in there with an air blower and blow all the crap out of the bolt heads. And then you're going to need a 6mm hex key, a socket, I guess, that you can reach in there from back here. Or if you wanted to, you could take, if you had someone to help you, you could, let me see, take off this piece of linkage here and take out these 4 bolts, and you could remove this whole back chute off of the thing, and it would make it easier to stand there and work on it. But who's got time for that? Now we got to get these guys out. You can see I've gotten one out already. Yes, I'm laying in the chute. That's when you hope nobody comes along and turns the thing on. You need a 6mm hex bit socket, and you get it started in there, and you got to make sure it's in there good. And then crack it loose with your ratchet. There we go. And then once you know it's loose, you can grab the little impact gun and spin it out, because they're actually quite long. And if when you take the last screw out, the blade falls right down into the bottom of the thing like I just did, don't worry. There's a door here you could take off to get it out. They thought of everything. And there it is. We got it out. Once I get the other one out, we'll clean them up, give them a sharp, and put them back in. Now I've got both the blades out. Now we're going to get the anvil out. So it has got 3 of these screws that go down through the bottom of the machine, and you can see the nuts there. So I'm going to first try just turning the nuts, and we'll find out if the screws are actually screwed into the darn thing, or if I need to hold them from above. There we are. We've got the anvil out, and I'll tell you what, after that, we're going to be finding a better way to hold this bugger in there. Holy Toledo, what a job to get that out. You have to be a contortionist. Well, it took until now for me to figure out to unhook the feed roller springs so I could get the roller all the way up and out of the way for much easier access at all the hardware in there. Oh well, live and learn. So what I'm going to do now, these are the blades that I took out of it. They are the original blades. I've already turned them around once. They've lasted for years and years and years. But I did remember when I bought this thing, I bought 2 complete extra sets of blades and anvil. So we're going to go ahead and just put new blades and a new anvil in it. These are still more than usable. They can be sharpened up and reused again. And I've still got 1 complete new set of blades in there. We put lots of anti-seize on the bolts, and then we just make sure the mounting surface is nice and clean. You don't want a wood chip underneath there when you tighten it down. And then we'll get them in there. They're supposed to be tightened to 35 foot-pounds. That's pretty hard to do down in there, so we'll just give them get them as tight as we can with the ratchet. You got to be really careful with this cheap hardware. You try too hard with the Allen key, and you'll make that round and be in a world of hurt. Once we've got these things back in, we need to set the clearance. The manual calls for 10 to 30 thou. So this here is an 11 thou feeler gauge, and it's in there nice and loose. So it's more than 10 and definitely less than 30. So that's that end good. Now we're going to go and check this end. And that's good too. So we'll go ahead, we'll go underneath, tighten these bolts up, and then we'll spin it around because there's two blades, and make sure our clearance on the other blade is good too. And you can see our clearance is good at this end too. It's kind of dark in here, but the feeler gauge goes in no problem. So what we could do now is go underneath and tighten all three bolts, or pardon me, these two are already tight. We'll go underneath, tighten the center bolt on the anvil, and then we can go around the back of the flywheel and put the nuts back on. Everything in here now is looked after. Pillow blocks, upper and lower, are greased. The drive line is greased. This little chain, its purpose is to hold that drive shaft guard in position while the drive shaft turns inside it. And it was missing, so I got a new little piece of chain, and that's good to go. So we can put the cover back on this now and continue working on the back half of it. Now I got to take this cover off so we can get at the feed mechanism inside and service that up. It's pretty simple. Take out these two bolts, take the knob off, and that comes straight up off. And then a few bolts to hold this cover on, and we'll be in there in a jiff. With the cover off, you can see in here what we've got to deal with. We make sure our belt is tight. It's good. The oil in the gearbox here, you just take the little cap off and make sure the gears are completely submersed in oil, which they are. If you can see gears, fill this thing up until the gears are covered. This here you can see is the clutch that operates the feed. These two dogs, there it's engaged. That unengages it, or disengages it, pardon me. And we went ahead and greased both U-joints, the slip yoke, and the pillow bearings on either side. So now we can close this baby up and move on to adjusting the feed roller. Once it's all together, we engage the feed and then thump the panic bar here and make sure it disengages. That's a little tight. Let's try it again. Perfect. I'll demonstrate that again. So, there's the feed roller engaged. And then to disengage it, you just bang this. And it disengages automatically. That's working perfectly. Now, we'll deal with this feed roller and make sure we've got it working as good as it can. So, if you can see on this end, it's just a little bit high. And it's pretty easy to adjust it. You just get an adjustable wrench on this here and just bend that down a tweak, a hair, and we'll see what we get. That's a lot better. That will help it pull that really small stuff in. Now, all that's left to do is take this thing outside and try it. Also, what I'll do for you in the comment section down below, I'll put the link to the video where we did the in-feed modification. So you all can see how we did that to improve the reliability of the in-feed. I don't know. I looked at some newer ones, and they seem to have a more robust PTO shaft in there than what this one came with. The original ones were ball and trunnion, and they were terrible. And this junk was actually their idea of an improvement. These chippers are kind of, I don't know. I don't want to use bad words to describe it, but it is a little primitive. Let's put it that way. And it's, you know, kind of rough around the edges. And it is definitely a tinkerer's machine. But if you got tools and you don't mind mucking around with stuff, like, you know, we had to do re-engineer the feed drive and little things like that, it's it's a good machine for what they cost, is I guess what I'll say about it. Working on it, I mean, getting at those knives and stuff, you could tell was a little labor intensive, but like I said, it is what it is. Anyway, it's a great machine. Let's get it outside and see it do some work. All right, let's see how she chips. First, we got to put on the PTO. This one's really stiff. Okay, let's see what happens. I've disengaged the PTO and slowed the engine down. If you happen to be using something like this on one of these old Fords or Fergusons, don't try and put it in gear while that thing's still going. It'll have the same effect as a bush hog. It'll launch the tractor forward because it back feeds up through the drive line. I just don't have enough room for an overrunning clutch on this when I've got this on like I would with the bush hog. Anyway, I gotta go put this thing away. Well, that worked out pretty well. Our chipper is all serviced up and ready for action. A lot of people have these chippers. They go by different names. That old one is a Jinma. There's been a few other names in over tuning in. Hope you'll join us again to see what we're up to on the Claremont Classic Garage. And until then, this is Kevin checking out. So long for now.